Hello, it's great to be with you today and have this important chance to learn about your and our colleagues' responses to the challenging times we're all facing and to work together to find the ways forward. Because our site is a living history farm with 45 tillable acres, we had an opportunity in March and April to restructure our agricultural operations in a way that would support our county's initiative to assist local food banks and pantries and soup kitchens faced with 30 to 50% increases in clientele. During the next few minutes, I'll tell you how we went about doing that while responding to the related safety and programming needs. Today, I'm on the way to a mill in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I have a load in the back of the truck. It's field corn that came out of the crib yesterday. It's last year's feed corn. We're going to be trading it for food grade grain products, either cornmeal or possibly whole wheat flour, whatever the miller has. Our first load of exchange grain was ear corn weighing 5,570 pounds. At $130 a ton, it was worth $362, enough to buy 20 50-pound bags of cornmeal, rebagged and gave to area food pantries. The pantries included our 2-pound bags in the weekly and bi-weekly distributions they gave to individual households. In all, we took 4 loads of feed corn, 1 of oats, 1 of spelts, and a half load of wheat to the mill and brought back cornmeal, oatmeal, and wheat flour. The corn we took to the mill is part of a corn, oats, wheat, hay crop rotation that helps us present the agriculture and lifestyle of a typical central New Jersey farm during the years 1890 to 1910. Visitors help plow the corn ground in the spring and help harvest the crop in the fall. These are just a few of the living history experiences offered on the farm's calendar of seasonal events. Normally, the field corn is used for feed and seed for educational foodways programs. In March of 2020, our staff made a COVID-related decision to temporarily suspend hog production in order to increase the availability of corn that could be traded for cornmeal and other grain products. The decision came shortly after a phone call from Friends of Howell Farm President Vicky Tumari, who was looking for help for a food pantry she ran. By late March, flour was already in short supply in area supermarkets and was noticeably lacking in the commodities available to food pantries. We were asked if we had any to spare. We did, having just shut down maple sugaring operations that normally bring 3,000 plus school children and others to the farm for pancake and syrup making programs. After our donation, thanks quickly came back from the food pantry. Our whole wheat flour was wonderful, but some families had asked if cornmeal was also available.
Hi, I'm Vicky Tumari, and I am a volunteer here at Howell Farm, and as well, I'm a director of a food pantry in Trenton, New Jersey, on West State Street. And what we're doing today is the farm has graciously given us a lot of oatmeal and cornmeal, and we've also gotten a lot of whole wheat flour. And we are putting it in bags, and we are giving it out to the recipients of the food pantry in Trenton.
Well, you know, for the past 35 years, as Howell Farm has provided educational programs for the community, what we've always said was that our chief product was those educational programs. But to make them work, we have to really farm. So we've always been farming all the tillable acres, and we have 65 of those. This year, because programming has been set back by the health crisis that we're experiencing, we're directing all of the farm's energy and resources toward what we really do anyway, which is farm and produce things that are valuable for human and animal consumption. We're directing all of the corn and wheat toward food bank provisions that we can do through Trenton area food banks and pantries. Because our oats are too difficult to hull and roll for oatmeal, what we're doing is taking those out to the mill and we're exchanging those for food grade rolled oats.
The customers at our food pantry have no way of getting to supermarkets actually and getting a supply of food. Most of our customers are very impoverished, and a lot of them are elderly and also disabled. And so these people walk to the food pantry a couple of blocks to pick up a bag of food from us. One of the things that they were excited about getting the grains was that they had all of these recipes that they wanted to try, and they were going to tell us what they would be able to make with all of the cornmeal that we gave, which was to prepare their fish with, flour was to prepare their chicken with, and then they took our recipes from the farm to do some whole wheat muffins for themselves as well. So I think the way that this started was I was on the phone with Pete, and I was telling him how we had been to a store and we didn't even see any flour on the shelves at all.
When Vicki told me about the need for flour, I thought maybe we could help because we had a very good harvest in 2019, and we had just taken a truckload of wheat out to the mill in Pennsylvania to be ground into whole wheat flour that we normally use in the farmhouse kitchen for educational programs involving baking and cooking with school groups and with the general public. But without the programs happening, we were glad that it could fill another need. And so were our park commissioners and our freeholders, who helped us identify other pantries and food banks in the community that might be in need. The extent of that need is just mind-boggling, and our executive director, Aaron Watson, and our county executive, Brian Hughes, encouraged us to do everything we could to help. In early April, when it was clear that parks and historic sites within the system that runs Howell Farm would be closed to the public, the farm staff reconfigured additional operations to support the growing needs of local food banks and pantries. There were 82 of them in our area before the pandemic began, and they were all seeing dramatic increases in the number of people they served. Our plan included expanding the kitchen and market gardens, adding 2 more grain fields to the crop rotation, doubling the flock of laying hens, and forming a knitting guild to make scarves, mittens, and hats from the farm's wool. Rob Flory, a fellow former Peace Corps volunteer who teaches sustainable farming methods to Howell Farm interns and school groups, replanned our historic kitchen and market gardens to maximize production of vegetables that would be needed by food banks. Collards, cabbages, kale, potatoes, sweet potatoes, peppers, okra, and onions, to name a few. With the addition of a second garden, nearly an acre of ground was used for vegetable production, which to date has yielded 7,200 pounds of fresh produce. Winter squash, turnips, beets, and kale are still being harvested. Soil preparation, planting, weeding, and cultivating done with a combination of hand and horsepower. Everyone on our staff of 10 farmers, educators, and park maintenance specialists pitched in. We also had help from 7 workhorses, a couple of iron horses, and farm dog Lucy, who helped with rabbit, Canada geese, and groundhog control. During the spring months, as grain crops greened up and grew taller in the fields, and before crops of fresh produce were ready for harvesting, staff members and volunteers met every Thursday in the farm's visitor center barn to bag whole wheat flour, cornmeal, and oatmeal for pickup by pantries and food banks over the weekend. They also washed and packed eggs, knitted woolen wear, and cut the seed needed to plant the half acre of potatoes that would eventually yield 1.5 tons of potatoes for food banks. Between mid-April and the end of October, the farm's 100 laying hens produced 1,099 dozen eggs that were given to food pantries. Directors of smaller food pantries appreciated the easily managed protein addition to distributions that sometimes lacked meat and dairy products due to the inavailability of cold storage at their centers. Eggs were packed in half-dozen cartons to enable pantries to distribute them more widely. Fleeces from the farm's flock of 24 mixed-breed sheep were sent to a mill for processing into yarn that volunteers knitted into scarves, hats, and mittens needed by community centers and shelters preparing for the upcoming winter. As every farmer knows, not every crop succeeds. The field of winter wheat we planted last fall to provide seed, feed, and flour in 2020 was damaged by summer storms and yielded very poorly. Use of a 1960s combine helped us salvage some of the crop, and luckily we had good harvests of spelt and rye. The fall corn crop has dried down nicely and looks to be good. Half of the 7.5 tons of grain products given to hunger relief programs thus far were in trade for grains produced on the farm, with the remainder purchased with donations from staff members, Friends of Hal Farm fundraisers, and community grants. In late June, when our county's parks were permitted to reopen on a limited basis, the farm staff created a free self-guided tour that took visitors to areas where crop and livestock production was geared for hunger relief. In the summer months that followed, 1,375 people took the tour, which is now offered to school groups in both virtual and live formats with core curriculum standards applied. The tours were offered to the public using a timed entry system that had people begin their 90-minute tour at an outdoor reception table where they received an interactive, self-guided tour map and a garden exploration game. The tour took them to fields and gardens where wheat and vegetable crops were in various stages of growth, and to barns and pastures where they learned about farm power such as horses, egg production, and wool production. As we gained experience managing mask and social distancing requirements, we saw opportunities to engage visitors in some of the hands-on and experiential activities we normally use. Hand washing and sanitizing stations were available throughout the farm. We were able to help people with mobility limitations take the tour with the help of extra long golf carts with built-in distancing capacities. Everyone who completed the tour and the crossword puzzle that went with it took home a bag of our freshly ground flour and a recipe card. They learned that with the help of food pantries, products like the flour in their take-home bag was being shared with many people in their own community. The Share the Harvest program resulted in requests to help other food banks and pantries and to participate in free walk-through and drive-through farmers markets. We were also asked to assist with Trenton's new Capital City urban farm. Share the Harvest is also helping us expand and improve some of our long-standing outreach programs that include plowing community and school gardens and growing an annual crop of potatoes for the Trenton area soup kitchen with the help of Hal Farm visitors and volunteers. Here's a look at our production so far, 27,131 pounds. It has reached 16,000 local households with the help of 22 food banks and pantries. We're still harvesting beets, turnips, winter squash, and corn, and popcorn. Last week, we included several ears of popcorn in one of our donations, and we're anxiously waiting to hear back how well it popped. Much of what we did this past year came very naturally and almost automatically. What farmers do, after all, is farm and grow food. But the challenges ahead are many. How can we remain true to our purposes as a historical farm? What will make our living history meaningful and relevant and fundable in the future? Here's what we were thinking in June. The operations that support food pantries are not done with circa 1900 methods we normally use, but with a mixture of old, new, and thing between. Hand tools, horse-drawn equipment, and tractors are often used together in the same field. Without visitors, there's no need to wear period clothing or take time to synchronize farming operations with programs. No one is needed for interpretation, so there is more help for planting and hoeing and harvesting, and for honing and teaching and documenting the skills that go with them. The moment is as historical as it is historic. We are closer to working the farm as a family than we have ever been. Doing everything we can to ensure a successful harvest has never mattered more. I have to conclude with a comment about my wife's selection of the photo used to brand the Farm Share the Harvest program. Well, I know from my years in the field that there were plenty of times in the past when farmers used 2 horses on a 3-horse binder. So she could have easily chosen a picture that showed the rule as opposed to the exception. We have them. And she would have saved us from those old-timers who love to shake their heads over the way us new people hitch our horses. Of course, we don't tell those guys how much they seem to have forgotten. And of course, I don't dare tell my wife how to do her job. She always managed to make us look a lot better than we really are, something that's hard to do no matter what we're wearing or how we're hitched. Thank you very much for listening to our story. We're looking forward to hearing yours.